you have found a special bonus edition of Hack and Grow Rich. My name is Bart Baggett. I'm author of The Magic Question and Success Secrets Rich and Happy. This show is about how to hack your life, your mind, your finance, your bank account, your career. If you're an entrepreneur, you will be glued to this conversation. And I am so excited about our guest today. It's going to be a short, powerful, impactful conversation with what I think might be my new best friend. So, Shaahin, tell us who we're talking to and why I'm so excited about today's show.
Yeah. So today, guys, we've got somebody who's not just cool looking, but also a super cool guy. We're talking to Marc Champagne. Marc, welcome on the show. Marc is one of the very interesting thought leaders that we feel is going to emerge in the next few years. So we really were excited about getting him on the show. Marc has written a book that should be out by the time you're hearing this or is on pre-order right now called Personal Socrates. Marc has had startups in the Silicon Valley space, and we can talk a little bit about that. But altogether, a person that gets lit up by the concept of mental fitness. So, Marc, welcome on the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about mental fitness and where you are on that journey now.
Yeah, well, thanks, guys, and Bart. I'm excited to see how we're going to become new best friends. I'm always looking for new friends, which is always good humans. So I'm excited to dive in. But yeah, I mean, I've had an interesting journey, I guess you could say, in the sense of spent about 10 years in the corporate world in brand management and product management, working on big brands in the healthcare space. But that during that whole time, I always had some sort of mental fitness practice. I mean, I didn't call it that back in those days. It was really just get up a bit earlier than most, read some positive things, try to prime my mind, and own the morning essentially, right? And start the day off on the right foot. I only share that because after about 10 years or 8 years in that world and doing those practices, eventually just got really frustrated with the digital reflective tools that were out there specifically for journaling. And that's, you alluded to it a bit in the intro, but just the startup space, that's when the decision was made, you know what, I would regret not trying to build this app, which at the time, there were a lot of great solutions for guiding people for, in meditations. Headspace and Calm are really starting to take off on more of a mainstream level. But there was really nothing out there for journaling and from a narrative or perspective that wasn't, oh, you're talking about the 12-year-old girl writing her diary about the boy at school type thing. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's not the type of journaling I was doing, and also not the type of reflection I was seeing used with the people that we read their books, watch their TED Talks, study, their lives, past, present, and people to come, essentially. So left that world, started the app, Keo, which was one of the first guided journaling apps. We reached about 86.9 million people with that thing. It was insane. It was a lot of people. We didn't expect that. I mean, I'm not a developer. My co-founder wasn't a developer. We had really no expectations, just trying to solve my issue with, a disjointed experience in the practice. And, long story short, though, we reached a lot of people, collaborated with a lot of great brands and experts in different spaces. But that didn't mean that the business models were working. And we had to delete that app and delete that business, which led to essentially the hardest years of my life, because that was a deletion of my identity at that time. And, I didn't know what to do next and all of that. So, I mean, I'll pause there because essentially, that was the start of my, I guess, obsession with mental fitness and helping people discover these practices, but then also the launch of a whole other, passion to stay in the space and not go back to the industry I had come from.
So you're a journaler, I imagine. You're one who journals.
Yeah,
Yeah, you still do?
absolutely. Absolutely. My definition has shifted though over the years, but go ahead.
Okay. So I want to get to that. So I think this is interesting because I oftentimes in my life will journal, and I've got stacks and stacks of journals for different things, and I have different methods of journaling that I've done. But one of the interesting things that I found about journaling is, for me, it's a little bit like meditation. And let me tell you why. So meditation in general, I find, is one of those things where you don't fucking need anything. You just need to go sit somewhere, shut the fuck up, and you're there. You can get in that state. A minute of silence is meditation. 5 minutes is great. You know, if you go too long, it starts to get wacky. But to get yourself into a flow state, as your friend Stephen Kotler says, you know, to get into that flow state can be anywhere from 7 minutes all the way to 25 minutes. And we work very closely, and, you know, we're going to have them on the show. These people who built this VR flow state generator for meditation called Trip. I don't know if you've heard of this. Trip is amazing. It gets you in a flow state in 8 minutes. We're not linked to them in any way, but you know, I'm very excited about that technology. But one of the problems I've had with meditation is that there's always some asshole trying to sell you meditation. And there's always some dude, and religions and gurus and all these guys are epic for this, but they're always trying to be like, hey man, come to the group meditation. I'm like, I don't need to sit with other people. I already know that I'm an asshole today, so I need to sit down and be chill. I don't need to sit with a whole nother room full of assholes. And I know Bart's made a short film about this. So is my question for you is, with journaling, which is something that, you know, and I want you to speak a little bit to people who don't journal about why it's important. You know, you obviously, it was something that was a focal point for your life. So you created a business around it. But for people who don't know, I want you to talk a little bit about that. But my question is that space kind of similar? Like, is all you need to do to journal just to journal, or is it different, and why?
Great questions. I mean, I don't know if it's different, but I think where most struggle is to start any of these practices, right? Like, in my opinion, an app like a meditation app like a Calm or a Headspace, for people that just don't know where to start or get started with meditation, gets them going. But if they've really done their job and actually brought someone into a meditation space, you shouldn't really need the app after a certain period of time, right? Not good for the business model, but realistically, it's an entry point. For me, you know, my evolution of journaling has been, and let's back up. First of all, journaling, the practice in itself is reflection. So I don't care. I mean, if you're going pen to paper, if you're using an app like I was when we were running the company, if you're leaving audio notes, or if you're taking a walk and just thinking, I mean, that's journaling. It's the reflection. But a lot of us, and, you know, myself included, fall into an autopilot of life and productivity and this and that. And we don't think, you know, we don't take time to slow down and actually think. And this is where guided practices like journaling, especially when you have prompts, force the pause, right? And I mean, the pause, the other thing too, I mean, with the pause and when you're using questions, I mean, I'm a huge believer that we're all asking questions. Again, just, are we asking enough of them, and are they quality questions? Because we're all one question away from a completely different life or a completely different outcome, right? I mean, for me, it was, what do you want for your life? And that pulled me out of what was turning into essentially a deep depression after deleting that business and that app and not knowing where to go next. But the one thing I noticed over the last, I guess, decade of really studying, you know, people in this space, or just, I would just say people doing interesting stuff around the world, 100% of them are doing some sort of reflective practice. It's all different. It all may look slightly different. It might, you know, might fit in the routines or rituals in a different way that doesn't resonate with you or I, but they're taking time to think, right? And they're taking time to clear their minds so that their minds aren't in this fear state and loaded with uncertainty and anxiety, because it's hard to think clearly and make good decisions when we're in that looping narrative, right? So that's where, for me, journaling is a huge asset to get people started in taking control of their mind and be mentally fit. I mean, there's meditation, there's visualization, there's breath work, there's a million different things you can do. But like I said, we all ask questions, so it's a great language, you know, where we can all start and try to upgrade how we're asking these questions.
So Mark, you and I have come to the same conclusion after me teaching this for 25 years, about that the internal dialogue, and specifically
Yeah.
instead of affirmations, questions are more powerful because it just bypasses all the internal chatter. I wrote a book about it called The Magic Question, and what you don't know, and I don't think Shaahin knows this, is that in 1995, I owned part of a bookstore called the Mental Fitness Company. And we
Oh,
spent about
amazing.
$20,000 a month on ads trying to brand the idea of mental fitness
Yeah.
in a local area, because this was before the internet. And it was wildly confusing to consumers because in all the self help bookstores, remember we had bookstores back then, it was either broken people, alcoholics,
Yep.
getting a divorce. Like that's what self help was. And my perspective was I didn't want to fix broken people. I wanted to take cool people like us and make us extraordinary. And what I
Yeah.
found was there was a bunch of practices that were all scattered around the world, from mind machines to meditation to this. And I was like, what's a word? And so I can't take credit for coining that word. There were a few people doing that. But I am so thrilled that you and I and hundreds of people are doing our best to say, look, it's not about being broken. It's about mental fitness. If you're going to spend all
Yeah.
this time on your body, spend 20 minutes on the day, whether it's meditation or audio or journaling. And that's sort of my backstory. So I'm just thrilled to turn it into what we can do as a takeaway, as a hack. What is your hack for quickly bypassing fear and anxiety and this sort of stuckness? Because I also came to the conclusion that one of the easiest hacks to teach anybody with no training was to how to ask quality questions. Tell us about how you came to that conclusion. And I know you've outlined this in your upcoming book, which I can't wait
Yeah.
to read.
Yeah. Well, so now I can see why we're getting along here. And I mean, it seems like you were too early on the term, essentially, too early for the market, essentially. Because I mean, I came to that language just out of necessity, but because of the whole stereotype or the description of how people thought of journaling, and people were going down that path. Or to your point, they're thinking of mental health, which you're always kind of pulling yourself out of the hole type thing. Whereas again, mental fitness is like that umbrella, and you're taking the ownership. Everything falls under that umbrella. So I'm happy that the term is definitely or picked up, I guess, or people are willing to see it, or drawing the links to physical fitness as well, which just helps open up the dialogue. I mean, for me, the thing I see in terms of a quick, fast mental hack to pause any narrative is really to dive into the present moment and layer on some gratitude in there. I'll never forget, right? When I was sitting in Toronto, Canada, I had the Apple dashboard up. I'm looking at the app metrics, 86.9 million App Store impressions. Next step, delete from App Store. How could we fail at such a colossal level? All the wrong questions were coming up. But eventually, while that was happening, I was just feeling, worse and worse. I paused for a second and looked and like, this sucks. I don't know what's next. We'll figure it out. But right now it sucks. I'm fearful of how we're going to pay our rent. I don't know what we're going to do next. But I just deleted this app on a laptop that most people in the world don't have. And you know what? That cut for a second narrative. Okay, it's not that bad. I'm in a co-working space with cool people, lots of opportunity, nice space. People aren't dropping bombs on my head. I mean, could be worse, a lot worse. So it's just, I mean, those were my toughest times, but every day, for me at least, I was stopping, take a walk, just notice the detail out there, call a friend, figure out. I had a list of the things I knew for 100% certainty would put a smile on my face. Sometimes that was meditation, sometimes I was exercising, could be calling a friend, could be doing something, but whatever it is, you can default to that list and cut the narrative that's currently looping, or release it, rechannel it, whatever it is, right? But I mean, I think in order to do that, you have to be clear first and recognize that you're in that pattern. And again, coming back to any of these mental fitness practices, the more you do them, the more consistent training you're doing, just like physical training, you're building those muscles. Like, there it is. Okay, I can see I'm flipping into an anxious loop here. I have the tools to release this, and I can get back to work, back to what I'm doing, back into that creation state of mind, and away we go. Doesn't have to be complicated.
No, I love that. So let's get into the book a little bit. And Bart and I talk a lot about this on the show as well. I think one of the key characteristics of people who I have around me in my close circle is that they are self-reflective people. There are a few who may not be. And, those relationships end up just being more fun and kind of cursory and, more like acquaintance type things. But
Sure.
the people in my life that I've built meaningful relationships with over time, the common thread is just that one thing, is the fact that they take the time to reflect on their lives. I think far more important than any of these other things. So part of reflection, as I'm ruminating on some of the lessons from your book and from your topic, is asking the right questions, and very similar also with sales. And we could talk a little bit about that too. Most people think sales is about, hey man, you need this, look at all the great features and this is fucking great, it's fantastic, it'll shine your thing and do this and that, when really sales is just asking the right questions and driving the prospect
Yeah.
to believe that it was their idea to buy what you're selling anyway.
Yeah. Asking the
Now,
right questions at the right time.
at the right time. So with being a reflective person, let me ask you this. What are the right questions that you should ask in order to further your evolution as a human, in order to optimize, in order to get yourself in that flow state?
Yeah. Well, the right questions will differ depending on who you are, where you're at in the journey, and what's going on in your life. The right question is a question that is well timed for where you're at, and that can pull you out of something or prime you forward or whatever the situation. For me, at that time, right, is what do you want for your life? Cut the narrative, allow me to get to the next question, start putting a plan together. I mean, if I were to ask that question to myself now, sure, there can be some reflection and some editing, but for the most part, I've got that pretty clear in my mind. And that's why I wrote the book, and that's why it's structured in the way of these mini profiles that start with prompts and people that we would all recognize, like Kobe Bryant, Maya Angelou, Robin Williams. There's something in there that if you open it up, intuitively you'll land on a prompt that resonates. And that's probably where you need to go right now, because it's relevant for whatever reason to where you're at. Maybe it's to get some more clarity. Maybe it's to boost up your habits in the morning. Maybe, there's a profile on Scott Belsky in there, who's the founder of Behance, now at Adobe. I mean, maybe you're building a product and his prompt is, why am I building this? And it goes down, and that can help in your product development and whatnot. So, I'd love to say, this is the standard question, but the key, I think, is that you jump in, take some time to start getting clear, release whatever's going on, and start asking and look for the questions that resonate the most, right? Because that's where it lands. It's just like, saying, hey, you have to meditate or you have to, do some sort of breath work. I don't think we have to do anything. I think we have to dedicate some time to mental fitness, but then fill that time with the things that make the most sense. Just like exercise, today I did a spin class. Tomorrow I might not want to do that. I'll do some weights, but I'm doing something to move my body, right? So that's the key. I think and I think it's the key. And I saw this with the app. It's important because then people actually stick with these practices, right? Because they find the things that work for them. So one question just to start it off for people is just, like I said, like what lights you up, what makes you smile, figure out, inject more of that into your day, right? There's a question in the book from James Clear where there's a profile around habits, but just who am I optimizing to become, right? Are you climbing the right mountain right now? And just taking a break and seeing, okay, I want to go here, but my calendar and meetings and everything I'm doing is going here. So there's a disconnect there. And now you have data, you've got insight. Whether you want to act on that or not, I mean, it's up to the individual, but at least right?
So, all right. So I've got a process for how I consume information. And it's come over years and reading hundreds of books and trying to learn as much as I can, but realizing that it's not, reading a book cover to cover that gives me the value. It's being able to absorb the information. So with your book,
Yeah.
this is what I'll tell you a little bit about my process, and then I'll lead you to the question. So my process now is that I'll find a topic that I'm interested in or curious, as Stephen Kotler says in Art of the Impossible. I'll find something that I'm curious about.
Yeah.
Then I will start just a cursory dive. I might read an article. I might check out a quick YouTube clip, something quick, something that takes 2 to 5 minutes tops. If I'm further interested, then I'll start the process of a deep dive, knowing that I can abort at any time. So I will do what I did with you. I will go through your, if you had TED Talks, if you had one called Fuck Up Nights that I watched, which was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Canadians, they're very polite. I'm shocked that Canadians would have something called Fuck Up Nights.
I know, right?
It looked like a little.
Still feels uncomfortable to say it.
I know, you're too polite. Are you Canadian?
Yeah.
Yeah. I gave you away when you said hoose. You just every time, man. I watched those shows with my family, all the real estate shows, and just like 5 minutes in, they just can't help it. They're like hoose, and I'm like, fuck, it's Canadian. But they try to hide the streets because they don't want people knowing it's Canada. Otherwise, they won't get.
We know.
But they can't help it. They're like, house. Oh, fuck. So anyway, I watch the videos, because video I find one of the quickest formats to absorb content. And I'm like, okay, do I want to dig deeper on this guy? Do I want to dive deeper? Is there more value for me to be had, or did I get everything? Has he said everything he has to say in the 5-minute TED Talk and I'm fucking done? If I find that interesting, then I will search for audio podcasts that the person has done. Why? Because I think that there is an element to podcasts, especially the way the format has evolved now. And I know you've got a great podcast, and we'll talk about that. And I know that you've asked me to be on, so I'm excited to be on your show as well. But I will listen to the podcast, because the podcast interviewers may prompt them to say something they may not have said, and it might give me some insight into who that person really is. Because we talk about authenticity on the show, and I really want to see who that person is behind the mask of the person they're saying. So that gives me more information sometimes than even reading their book. But like with your book, if I find added value and I really want to dig deeper, with Stephen Kotler's books, then what I'll do is I will find a summary of the book. And then after this, I've read the summary, and there's a lot of great guys that are doing it. There's a guy, Brian Johnson, who does this one called Philosopher's Notes. There's another one that I think it's like the 5-minute productivity summary, something like that. And they make these like whiteboard videos where they tell you all the things that you're going to learn from reading this book. And it's fucking great. People are like, oh my God, it's terrible. No one's going to read the book. No, bullshit. In fact, it sets you up for absorbing the information in a peak flow state, because you've already learned it on a cursory level.
Yeah.
Then I'll do the Audible book. Then I'll get into the actual paper book if I really love it. And with yours, I'm absolutely going to go through all those steps. Now, with that said, my question to you is, for the people who are watching Hack and Grow Rich right now, the people that are watching our live stream, our 65,000 viewers plus now on YouTube, share with them a little minute or less, or about a minute cliff note on what they're going to learn from your Socrates book.
First of all, I love your process and your setup. And it's something I write about in one of the profiles in the book, is just like, because we've become obsessed with quantity of books and checking off that we've read 100 books in the year or something like that, but we've actually consumed, or we haven't applied any of the knowledge, right? It's empty knowledge in a way, which is unfortunate. So that's a cool system you've got. And I mean, I was thinking about that as I was writing the book, because again, just like how we set up the app, it was to solve a problem on my side. And for me, the way my morning reflection usually takes place is I read, 5 to 10 pages out of whatever book I've got ongoing, but I'm writing in the book and applying it live to what's going on in my life. So personal Socrates, the objective is that, again, if you land on James Clear's profile or Kobe Bryant's, for example, you're in there. It's 2 to 4 pages max. And along the way, there are some teachings, there are some stories to illustrate, based on those people, but it's loaded full of questions that you can pause, write in the book. The hard copy is designed, the publisher, Baron Fig, has been selected very specifically. They write, or they make really nice quality notebooks. They're the ones behind actually James Clear's habit tracking journal. So the book stays open. There's a lay flat, it doesn't flip around. So if you're writing, it works. There's page numbers just like you would expect in a Kindle, where it says 1 page left or 5 pages left. So you always know, for example. So it's a different experience. It comes in a slipcase as well. It's
Oh, wow.
very different, and it's all designed to just really break that autopilot again of just trying to motor through the book and actually not apply anything, but just to slow down. So other than, I write it right in the intro, other than reading the whole introduction in one sitting, really encourage everyone to just take it slow, pick a profile that makes sense for you, start there, do that once a morning whenever you're doing your mental fitness. And there's 40 profiles in there. You've got enough to start building some habits as you're going through. But ultimately, the whole thing is set up in 3 sections. First, to get clear. We need to get clear. We need to understand where we're going, what we want, who we're optimizing to become, all of that first. Then you can be more intentional with your actions, your thoughts, how you're processing. There's a profile in there from an interview with Ryan Holiday around what is within my control. So there's some good stoicism lessons. Then you've got Marcus Aurelius as well. So going way back, essentially, the godfather of this stuff. And then the last step, if you do the first 2, the last step just comes automatically. It's exponential opportunity shows up because you can see where to go. All of a sudden it becomes clear, just as if you're going into a physical room and you blew out all the clutter in the boxes. You can actually see in the back of the room, you can see there's a door there and you're going to walk through it. It's the same thing with our mind, right? So that's essentially the flow of or how the book is structured. And also just what I've noticed in 250 or so interviews now over the last 4 years on my show, Behind the Human, and then also just studying these minds personally, that seems to be the recipe. And I'm leveraging the Socratic method, hence the personal Socrates, in a simplified manner, so you're not thinking about that. You're just thinking about getting clear, intentional, and opportunity. That's it.
I love that. Personal Socrates. You should do a song too, like the Depeche Mode song.
Mark, when we used to do seminars, we used to use this metaphor where we'd have the whole audience look around the room and find everything that's green. And they'd close their eyes, and then I'd say, okay, show me everything that's red. And the audience was just flummoxed because they were always looking for green. It was such a great metaphor. And so you mentioned people finding doors they didn't see before. And that's exactly what the system of questions is. It activates the reticular activator system. They all of a sudden are now knowing, their brain is unconsciously scanning for all these things that they wouldn't have even asked for if they just didn't ask a better question. Where's the door of opportunity? Who do I need to meet? How do I double my income? How can I attract a beautiful person in my life? And I love, it's the simplicity of it makes it so applicable. We teach just writing one question a day on an index card and sticking it in your car and sticking it in your notebook and all. Ask the question and just boom. Now you're asking great questions all the day by accident. And I just love it. And I love the fact that you're bringing in 2,000-year-old philosophers, because they probably had some really clever questions that I wouldn't have thought of.
Well, and they're just, what's interesting about that, especially with Marcus Aurelius, he's in his meditations or his journal, he's reflecting on the same things that most people are thinking about today. Where am I going to go on vacation, or what's that going to look like? Concerned about a massive plague. There's a lot of overlap here, right? And how do you handle these things? And in his day too, he lived in an era where I think he lost. They had way more kids, but he lost 13 of his kids. How do you process that kind of loss and grief and whatnot, and run a whole country and deal with, we often think that, our lives right now are more complicated and more stressful, but they're just different. And again, I think for me, at least with Stoicism, it's always a good little pause. And it only takes a few seconds. It's while my coffee's brewing, I read something around Stoicism to shift perspective, right? And then focus on, okay, here's what I can control. And that could be the mental fitness for the day. You've already started the day with a prime mind, and you're in control in that situation, right? You're controlling how you're starting that day and how you're thinking, right? I mean, just that little micro win, man, we'd have a seriously thriving population.
I love that. I love that. I think the same way about Alan Watts.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and recently, all these people are sending me Alan Watts stuff, because we did a show where I mentioned it on a couple shows, and all these people are sending me Alan Watts playlists on Spotify. There are insane, like, people who have
Yeah.
spent like years, like, they build entire tracks and editing to Alan Watts talking. He's such an amazing orator that, if I'm ever in that phase where I'm like a little bit less than optimal, I put that on. It's impossible to be
Yeah.
less than in a flow state after you listen to Alan Watts. So awesome. So, dude, thanks so much for being on. I wanted to ask you, where can people find you? Where can people listen to your podcast? And how can people get their hands on this book? And, now that I see it, you got to get the hardcover. There's only one way, and that's to get the hardcover of your book. And I'm definitely going to get it, and I'm going to order some for everybody on my staff. How do we get a hold of you, and how do we get your book?
Yeah, well, thank you for those kind words. I mean, the easiest place, everything links out from here, is just behindthehuman.com. Podcast is there. Book will be there. The book will be up on Amazon or directly from Baron Fig, especially the pre-order. There's some bonus mental fitness guides in there and whatnot for the hard copy. And there is a Kindle and audiobook. The audiobook, man, I recorded in this booth. That was a real scene. It's a hell of a lot of work, but as you know. So yeah, all formats will be available. But yeah, if you can get the hard copy, I mean, you'll see there's definitely some effort and some love put into a different experience.
I love that. Yeah, I know we recorded the audiobook to my book as well right here, and it's an intense experience. It's a lot of sitting your ass down and recording. So amazing. Okay, well, I'm super excited about this, and hopefully when the book comes out, we'll have an opportunity to get you back on and talk more about some of the topics in the book. And thank you so much, guys, for you guys tuning in right now. You've been listening to Hack and Grow Rich with our special guest, Marc Champagne. I'm Shaahin, the host of Hack and Grow Rich, with my co-host, Bart Baggett. All our details are going to be in the show notes there. And my book, Billion, How I Became King of the Thrill Pill Cult, is out and available now. So make sure to check that. Make sure to check Marc's book. It's on pre-order right now, called Personal Socrates. And you can also visit him on his website. And we'll see you guys all on the next episode.
Thanks, Marc. I'm so glad to meet you guys. And Shaahin, always, it's just a great experience having the show. Hit the subscribe. We'll see you next week on Hack and Grow Rich.
Boom.